Recently, I shared a really simple tweet. It says, a lot of Black people do not have empathy for other Black people. I shared that maybe about 3 hours ago, and so far I got a little more than 47,000 likes, 166 comments, and 354 retweets. For me, that's a lot of traction for it to only be about 3-4 hours old. But already with me seeing some of the responses I've gotten, it's showing me that I must have struck a nerve. And before I get into some of the comments and the feedback, I want to share with you why I actually did that tweet. It was just simply last week where I looked over some of the different challenges that are impacting Black boys and girls in education. We looked at literacy rates, the reading rates, all of that, especially in California, we're using that as an example, but it basically showed us how kids are being slipped through the cracks. And then I went on to show different examples of Black boys in particular who are doing quite well just with a little bit of tender love and care, TLC, right? Just with the right resources, the right adults to believe with them, and the right access. These kids, they're writing books. They're philanthropists opening up organizations to cure homelessness. Okay. They are doing algebra at 2. I mean, amazing things. And so I went over that last week. And then just earlier today, I did a live where I looked at sex trafficking, which disproportionately impacts Black girls. Not Black women, Black girls. The average age of people who get forced into human trafficking is between the ages of 12 to 14. These are girls, not women. And it is only about 3 to 5% of boys who are involved in sex trafficking. Now, labor trafficking is something different. Besides the point, Black kids who don't have access to resources, oftentimes in single parent households, oftentimes underfunded, oftentimes dad is not around, oftentimes there's poverty, crime, just not in a good environment for kids, and they get caught up in the system. Yes, there are a lot of things systemically that happen and that are negatively impacting the Black community. But there's also the issue of Black folks just not caring. I'm not saying this is everybody, but there are Black people today who, at the end of the day, just really do not care that there are kids in their community who have poor literacy rates, do not care that it is their group of women who are disproportionately impacted by sex trafficking, do not care that Black men still face higher incarceration rates, Black boys have the lowest sexual debut, have poor literacy rates. Like, they just don't care. And the reason I'm saying that is because we have the talent necessary, the resources necessary, the raw materials necessary to actually bring change and bring impact, even if it was the smallest, even if it was on the smallest level. I think there are aspects of us in the community, right, who have become so apathetic, quite frankly, and have become so desensitized to the pain, to the trauma, to the destruction, to the detriment, to the negativity, where it's just like they don't even really care anymore. This is why, in my opinion, you have certain movements like the Divest movement, where it's like, okay, I'm just gonna go over there and I'm just gonna disconnect, right? Or you have the SYSBM, which is just like, save yourself, like leave the burning building. It's all going down, it's all going away, it's all going to crash and burn. Take care of yourself, right? So it's like, but you have these different movements who are really essentially saying, this community is garbage. I want nothing to do with it. So the best way to handle it is just go away, right? Not fix the problem, not try to be a part of the solution, not whatever, but go away. There's like no empathy. There's Black men who have been burned by Black women, so much so that they are completely resistant to their cries, completely resistant. They don't care anymore. They have no sympathy. They see a Black woman hurting, it's like nothing to them. Some of them even gain pleasure from it because they've been so burned. Maybe their mother abused them. Maybe their mom wasn't there. Maybe a girlfriend broke their heart, or a wife, or fill in the blank. Maybe there's been a slew of women in their lives who were poor examples of women, and they just grow desensitized. And then you have Black women. Maybe their dad abused them. Maybe their dad wasn't there. Maybe they were, they were essayed. Maybe this person broke their heart. Maybe daddy left, whatever. But there's been a series of events of bad relationships with men, unprocessed trauma, all these decades after decades, centuries after centuries, whatever, of bad relationship dynamics, inability to connect with yourself, inability to know how to deal with this stuff. Trauma repeats itself, and after a while you just grow cold and you just don't care. You just don't care. So this was the thought behind what I was saying, and this is why I was kind of interested that I got so much feedback, because I'm like, I must have struck a nerve. Some of you guys say, okay, well, only God could save the community. I absolutely believe that. One of my favorite verses in the scripture, right? if my people who were called would humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I would hear from heaven. I would forgive their sins. I would heal their land, right? That's one of my favorite verses. Basically, God saying, if you turn back to me, I will help you. I will heal you. I will take you through the process of restoration, of reparation. I will do that as your God. So I fundamentally believe in that. But also, as a Christ follower, it's like I am a co-laborer with God. So it's not like I'm just sitting here praying and then waiting for God to just change the community while I divest or I go over here and do nothing. It's like, if I believe in the restorative power of God, if I believe that God's desire is for repentance, but then also for healing, right? Turning away from your wicked ways or turning away from the things that are harming you and turning to activities that are restorative, to a lifestyle, to a mindset, to a being that is restorative, that is healed. I have to be a part of that in my everyday life, practically. It's not just something that I hope and pray and then one day by and by comes an active process of what I do. And so I get challenged sometimes when people say, okay, well, only God can do this. God has given you the power in your own life today to do something. If you have the resources, whether it's of time, whether if it's of intellect, whether if it's money, all of the above, and you don't do anything, it's like, well, if God lives in you, what are you doing with that? Anyways, let's look real quickly at some of the comments, because that was what I actually thought was the most intriguing. This is because a lot of Black people ain't really been through nothing, so they can't feel what they don't understand. I don't really know what he means, ain't been through nothing. I think I'm gonna need him to clarify that a little bit more, because that's a little vague to me, honestly. This one, it says, it's sad, oppression psychology destroys us individually and as a collective. Okay, so this person is like, yeah, I agree. It's like folks be so oppressed, they're so desensitized that they just kind of tap out. And that's what I'm saying. I think for some of us, this isn't for all of us, but for some of us, it's just like, I think you're just so overwhelmed with the amount of bad stuff you continue to see. You just desensitize. It's partially like a coping mechanism, right? Okay, this one, it says, I love Black people, but what I don't love is the buffoonery that certain folks display. So I don't have empathy for them, nor do I give them a pass just because they're Black. I get it. A lot of us live or grew up in the hood, but that's no excuse. Women are considered to be a form of child abuse in this Generation Z. But for millennials and past generations, they made some of us act right. We respected our elders more. Now do some elders need to be checked? Yes, because they're not always right. So I hear what he's saying. It's like, look, there needs to be a distinction between I'm here and I'm empathizing, I'm not only empathizing, but I'm working with you for the purpose of trying to restore and being a problem, versus being codependent and enabling bad behavior. Two different things. I'm not saying you gotta sit here and enable bad behavior. If a dude's in his 35, 40 ain't held a stable job for 35 years, you don't need to empathize with that. No. It's like, okay, now maybe you can ask why. You probably are depressed. Maybe you have some psychological issues. Maybe you need to get therapy, whatever. Fine. But I'm saying, I understand. It's like at a certain point, you still have to hold people accountable to their decisions. And here's the thing. Two things can be true at once. You can empathize with things that have happened that have traumatized people that might undermine their ability to be reasonable, responsible results. You can empathize with that while still holding them to the task and saying, but you still need to step up. I'm sorry that your mom didn't hug you when you were 10. Or I'm sorry that you were abused. All these things happened to you. You were abused, and this severely messed with you psychologically. You're 50. Get some help. Go to God. Okay, get therapy, group therapy. Do whatever. 12-step. Do whatever you have to do. Get some help so you can get a stable job, right? So it's like both things need to be there. I think empathy, but then also along with empathy, the practical solutions needed for a person to get out of their traumatized state so they can be functioning adults who flourish. So I agree with him on that. Like, you don't want to sit there and just like coddle dysfunction. It says, yeah, why do you think this is? I already explained that. I don't have empathy for ninjas, if that makes sense. Okay, going back to what he said, it's like, look, we need to make a distinction between Black folks and ninjas. Okay, they're not the same. Like I said, some folks just got a ninja mentality. They just have a ninja mentality. But even then, even ninjas, even the pookies, they have. Even the pookies have an origin story. Okay, there's a making of a pookie origin story. I'm not saying that you have to be in compliance or be in agreement with what pookie does, but I'm saying people young, innocent children don't grow up wanting to be Pookies. Pookie was made into something. I want to understand why somebody did something before I just demonize them and say, you're just horrible. I want to understand why, because most people don't grow up wanting to be horrible individuals. I think one reason Black people have a hard time empathizing with each other is because they have not received empathy. How many Black men have ever heard, you matter? What you feel, what you're going through matters. Like, that's not a thing. Okay, and then even Black women, I mean, I think it's more like in the feminist era, there's more like, okay, listen to Black women. There's been more of a push for Black women's voice to be heard, but there's still messages all the time that you're not as good as that person, or you don't belong in this, right? And so I think one major reason Black people have a hard time empathizing with other Black people is because they themselves have not received empathy. They themselves were hurt or traumatized or abused or whatever, and nobody said that they cared. And so eventually you just be like, the world is hard. This society is hard. You're in survival mode. And then you treat everybody the same way. So I think that has something to do with it, honestly. That sounds like a setup in a word game. Okay, I don't know what that means. It's just a comment. It says, it depends who you consider Black. Africans, no. Indians, no. Islanders, no. Dark-skinned Latinos, no. Black Americans, absolutely. I don't understand that. I'm like, Black, I don't understand that. Like, seriously, Africans call themselves Black before anybody else, but that's a whole other thing. So I don't understand this whole, you're only Black if you're in the States. What? That makes zero sense to me, honestly. This one, it says, a lot of people, FBA, okay, a lot of people don't have empathy for other people. I fix it for you. No, I talk about Black issues, so you don't need to fix that. Once I realized this, I decided to only rock. It's another one that says, once I realized this, I decided to only rock with the Black people that make it known that they rock with me. I can't do the lift all Black people thing. We are not all on code. I hear what you're saying. Empathy doesn't mean that you are codependent or that you are basically enabling bad behavior or enabling somebody else. No. See, for all humans and animal and insects, also just not to my own detriment. That's a good point. Another one says, and some ninjas who are the closest to me owe me money, do the right thing. It says it's sad. We've become so desensitized to the trauma, negativity, and thirst for attention that our humanity is slowly eroding. It's time to reclaim our empathy and prioritize what really matters. Stay human, mental health matters. That part right there, I really agree with this. Like I said, I think some of this is just we've been desensitized over the years after years, decades after decades. I really think there is some of that. You're just desensitized to your own pain of yourself, let alone people who look like you. You don't even care. This is why it's like you got, and this is no disrespect, right? You have Black folks who are deeply involved in like what's going on in Israel and Palestine and choosing sides and talking about that, but nobody's talking about Congo. It's like, bro, you are more closely connected genetically and culturally to those people than Ukraine and Palestine and Israel. And again, that's not to say that, like, of course you can have empathy for whoever. It isn't, you don't have to reserve your empathy for somebody who looks like you. But what I'm saying is that I think sometimes we're not even fully aware of how we become so silent to our own pain or to our own stuff, but then you can quickly connect with somebody who you might even in some subconscious way see as more superior. This is not everybody, and just a thought. Anyways, that's what I got. A lot to unpack there, but those are just a few comments. If you want to check out the whole thing, you can click the link and check out the feedback. But what do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know. Leave your questions, comments, concerns in the comment section below. Thank you so much for listening if you've gotten this far, and we'll talk later. Bye.